DraftKings, listen to me.
Only from FanDuel.
I'm betting rebound props on FanDuel.
I've been betting on it.
It's got an NFL offer.
You're gonna miss, Gronk.
Make it legendary.
Greed, hope, celebrities, and sports all mixed together for one purpose: to take your money.
Another high up at FanDuel told me that the way that parlays just annihilate customers reminded him of when he was a military contractor helping warships be more lethal.
Sports used to be about the game being played. Now, you're the one being played.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
It's 2006 and Congress is trying to get control of online gambling. Poker sites are everywhere, money is moving fast, and most of it is happening outside of government control. So, lawmakers bolt a bill onto unrelated port security legislation and rush it through. The Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act. Buried inside the bill is a carve-out for fantasy sports. They're classified as games of skill. That provision was originally intended only to protect payment processing for casual hobbies, for groups of friends playing fantasy sports or coworkers. But it would become the Trojan horse for the largest and most sinister gambling ecosystem in American history. In 2009, Nigel Eccles, his wife Leslie, and several others launched FanDuel out of a converted university classroom in Edinburgh, Scotland. None of them having actually ever played fantasy sports. 2 years before, in 2007, they built a prediction market called HubDub, where users bet on news and election outcomes. It flopped, though to be fair, they were about 15 years too early. Then in 2012, Jason Robbins, Paul Lieberman, and Matthew Kalish start DraftKings out of a spare bedroom in Watertown, Massachusetts. Instead of having season-long fantasy leagues, where you draft once and wait months to see how you do, DraftKings let you enter a new contest every day with real money on the line.
They have one-day games, so you're not locked in. It's like a new season every time you play. And best of all, you could win a shipload of money.
And investors would come pouring money into both companies. Even the major sports leagues took equity positions in companies built on mechanics that looked a lot like gambling. And keep in mind, these are the same leagues that took strong stands, well, at least at the time, against gambling. By 2015, both companies raised about $400 million each. And they were about to spend most of it on commercials. All those commercials. September 10th, 2015, opening night of the NFL season. DraftKings and FanDuel flood television with non-stop ads. More than $30 million spent in ads in the first week alone. By early October, the total spend crosses $200 million, basically keeping cable television afloat. DraftKings becomes the largest TV advertiser in the country during that stretch. If you were watching any sports, you couldn't escape it, no matter how hard you tried. Even though the barrage of commercials triggers negative reactions online, it doesn't matter. DraftKings reports a surge in users. FanDuel starts adding tens of thousands of players a day. The companies generate about $2.6 billion in entry fees alone for that year. And the message is super simple. Anyone can win. That's what you're supposed to believe. But what the ads don't tell you, anyone probably isn't you. Meet Sahil Sood. At 26 years old, he looks like your average sports fan. Except, not really. He lives in a Boston penthouse, once rented by Celtics guard Rajon Rondo. As a top DFS player, he aims for an 8% daily return. In 2015, he made over $3 million on DraftKings. He entered hundreds of lineups per contest. Custom algorithms, pulled box scores, weather, pro football focus metrics. But here's the thing, he's a former data scientist with an Amherst math and economics degree turned full-time optimization machine who destroys everyone else.
Collecting data, figuring out how to build my lineups. Like even in college, I was like, oh, I don't want to be a typical Indian programmer. And then I was like, took my first programming class, I was like, damn, I'm actually really good at this. And then
DraftKings had a name for players like him, grinders. high-volume pros using automated scripts to flood contests with optimized lineups. Grinders inflated prize pools, which attracted new players. And those new players, they lost. Bloomberg tracked the data over a 3-month period. In that time, the top 1.3% of players actually finished in the green. The majority of players lost. And Nigel Eccles was quoted in the article saying whether they win or lose, the feedback is that they love the experience. Yeah, great experience. 9 out of 10 customers lose their money, but hey, they loved it. A former FanDuel consultant put it plainly. It's only a skill game if you have the biggest bankroll and the best technology. That's the dirty little secret. October 5th, 2015. The New York Times drops a news bomb of a story. A DraftKings employee, Ethan Haskell, accidentally publishes lineup ownership data, which NFL players appeared most often in user lineups, before a major contest closed, making $350,000 on FanDuel. And people are asking, why are employees allowed to play at all? DraftKings blocked employees from entering contests on its own platform. FanDuel had the same rule, but neither company blocks employees from playing on the other service. FanDuel later confirmed DraftKings employees had won an estimated $6 million in prizes on their platform, playing against the average Joe who believed the ads and thought it was fair. It's like a poker dealer who's banned from playing at his own table, but is perfectly free to sit down at the table next door with all the same cards up his sleeve. Within 3 days, attorneys general in New York and Massachusetts opened investigations. November 10th, 2015. The New York Attorney General's office issues cease and desist letters to both companies, saying, "It is clear that DraftKings and FanDuel are the leaders of a massive, multi-billion-dollar scheme intended to evade the law and fleece sports fans across the country."
If they make representations to people that you got as much of a chance as anyone to win a bet, which essentially they do, and that's not true because there's a whole group of people who have access to information that enables them to pick football players every week that are more likely to result in a big win, then it's a rigged casino.
1 week later, the New York AG sues them both. Nevada had already banned them, Georgia, Illinois, and Michigan raised flags, and the Department of Justice circled. Ad spending completely collapsed. From $266 million in national TV spend in 2015 to just under $24 million a year later. Both companies settled with Massachusetts, paying $1.3 million each over deceptive practices allegations. The companies once calling themselves legal entertainment platforms were now described in court filings as unlawful gambling businesses. Hypocrisy infects all industries, whether it's Hollywood, Washington, and even sports. The same leagues that banned actual Hall of Fame players from the Hall of Fame, the institutions with Rule 21 warning players that gambling on the sport meant permanent banishment, but the minute the money got big enough, every single one of those leagues lined up to get in bed with DraftKings and FanDuel.
Yeah, but baseball is in bed with gambling, and so aren't they being hypocritical with Pete Rose?
Do you want people at football and basketball games rooting for the spread or rooting for their favorite team?
Rose died in September 2024, and at the time, FanDuel was the MLB's official sports betting partner when he died. About a year later, he was reinstated and became eligible for the Hall of Fame. Turns out it's easier for the league to not have to apologize to a living person for being hypocritical. Then Michael Jordan, 6-time NBA champion, the greatest basketball player of all time, took an equity stake in DraftKings and joined the board as a special advisor. The perfect fit, really.
Do you have a gambling problem?
No, I enjoy it. It's a hobby. If I had a problem, I'd be starving. I'd be hawking this watch. My championship rings, I would sell my house. I would do this. My wife would left me, or she'd be starving, or my kids would be starving. I do not have a problem. I enjoy gambling.
The Jordan announcement added an estimated $3.5 billion in market cap in a single morning. The sports league became investors and partners. November 2016. DraftKings and FanDuel tried the obvious move, merge. The FTC, though, they killed that idea. Combined, they would control more than 90% of the US market for paid daily fantasy sports contests. So what do you do when you're a billion-dollar company and the pesky government gets in your way? Well, you start buying access. Before 2015, neither DraftKings or FanDuel reported a single dollar in lobby. Now, that changed quick once the attorneys generals arrived. Within a year, lobbyists were on retainer in state capitals across the country. If they can't block legislation, they'll just shape it. In Kansas, lobbyists threw a party for state lawmakers while the sports betting debate was unfolding a few blocks away in the Capitol. Lawmakers were smoking cigars and drinking expensive scotch provided by the lobbyists. Here's a few other examples. Patrick Jenkins, who was a college roommate of Carl Hastie, well, Patrick ran a lobbying firm. In 2014, his firm billed $37,500. And then Carl became Speaker of the New York State Assembly in 2015. It's the second most powerful job in the state. By 2019, Patrick's firm billed $3.22 million. DraftKings and FanDuel also happen to be clients of Patrick. The lobbying didn't end there. In Illinois, lawmakers tried to block DraftKings and FanDuel as, quote, bad actors for operating after the state had declared daily fantasy illegal. The companies responded with a $1 million ad campaign and a wave of political contributions.
Some of the candidates are being bankrolled by the sports gambling industry. And actually, according to the report, a super PAC funded by DraftKings is pouring millions of dollars into Illinois races.
And the clause, well, it got softened. Licenses were granted. Funny how that works. Same thing happened in Florida. And the worst part for these politicians, the states weren't even getting what they were promised. The industry pushed hard for lower tax rates during legalization, arguing it would maximize tax revenue. No, it didn't. Those states got screwed over, with nearly $150 million less than projected. On top of that, the industry convinced most states to let them classify their promotional bet giveaways as tax deductions. In 2022 alone, they gave out close to $1 billion in promos, which actually costed states over $120 million in potential tax revenue. The sales pitch was tax money for schools and roads. What states actually got, though, was a cleverly engineered wealth transfer from the average bettor's bank accounts straight to their own corporate accounts, with the government, of course, getting a bit of the vig. May 14, 2018, the Supreme Court strikes down the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, the 1992 law banning sports betting across most of the country. States can now legalize it. This was a huge deal because for over 20 years, that law had stood as a wall against sports gambling. It was written in 1992 by Senator Bill Bradley, two-time NBA champion with the New York Knicks, who turned politician. He believed gambling would ruin the integrity of sports. The NBA, MLB, NFL all backed him at the time.
Nothing has done more to despoil the games Americans play and watch than widespread gambling on them.
Gambling is permitted on team sports. Winning the bet may become more important than winning the game.
They sued states that tried to legalize betting. For decades, they framed gambling as a threat to their game, until a governor and a member of the Supreme Court fought to get rid of it. Most legal observers called the fight dead. The Supreme Court didn't. 6 justices agree and the bill was overturned.
We therefore hold that the passbook provision outlawing state authorization of sports gambling is unconstitutional.
In response, Senator Bradley said that it will be inevitable that there will be game-fixing scandals like they had in the 60s. He was right.
Return now to our top story. Federal prosecutors have accused current and former NBA players and coaches of taking part in 2 stunning gambling schemes.
Within a few years, the NBA was processing one of the largest gambling corruption cases in league history, involving a coach, multiple players, and even organized crime figures.
What was your reaction when you first heard the story?
I thought it was predictable. I was sad, but I thought it was predictable. When the sports betting ban that I passed in 1992 was repealed in 2018, I thought it would lead directly to these kind of scandals, and it has, unfortunately.
Those same leagues that stood beside Bradley in 1992 all flipped right after the bill was overturned. The NBA signed DraftKings as an official betting partner. The MLB partnered with MGM. The NFL now earns roughly $600 million annually from gambling relationships. The same institutions that once warned of corruption began collecting a percentage of every wager.
Here we are, in this age of legalized, normalized, and heavily monetized gambling, and we read the commissioner's words earlier in the show from 2012, normal incidents of the game in an era of widespread legalized betting will lead to suspicion, mistrust, and allegations of point shaving and game fixing, and that's exactly where we are. What they feared and ignored has come to fruition. Now they have a problem.
Gary Bettman, the NHL commissioner who personally warned that legalized sports betting would put games, quote, under a cloud of suspicion and turn fans into point spread fans who cared more about the line than the game, signed a league sports betting partnership deal. Even Disney, owners of ESPN, got into the sports betting game. Originally against it, but ironically, Disney became a major DraftKings shareholder through its acquisition of 21st Century Fox assets in 2019 when they bought that company. And that pretty much sealed it. It took a little over 2 years of buying off politicians and flashing money to the leagues that sports gambling was here to stay. Flutter Entertainment merged with FanDuel in 2018. The deal valued the combined company at $4.2 billion. Now you'd think the founders, Nigel and Leslie Eccles, who also had put their entire life savings into FanDuel, would become multi-millionaires from the deal. Nope, they got nothing. What's worse is that the employees got nothing either. Investors had negotiated terms that entitled them to the first $559 million from any sale. During the merger, the acquisition of FanDuel came in at about $465 million. Every dollar went to investors. Now imagine you're employee number 24 at the company. You took a below-market salary because you thought the equity was supposed to make up for it. You watched the company grow from a scrappy startup to a household name. You worked late nights and weekends because you believed you were building something that would pay off. Then the acquisition gets announced. You do the math. You start thinking about what your shares might be worth. Then you find out zero, because the terms were structured so venture capitalists got paid first. The founders signed those terms. You know what? So that's on them. But most employees never saw the terms. They were told they were getting stock options at the hiring stage, and that was it. Meanwhile, across town, DraftKings went public in 2020. The stock doubled within months. Jason Robbins became a billionaire. Fortune 40 under 40, winning American Gambling Awards C-Suite Executive of the Year. The man who spent years insisting his company wasn't gambling now stands at the center of American gambling. One founder becomes the king of gambling, and the other founders lose the greatest hand they ever had. In 2018, Americans spent about $7 billion on sports betting. By 2025, it exploded to $167 billion. Betting app downloads went from 6 million in 2019 to over 40 million in 2025. Since the federal ban was lifted, Americans have lost billions on sports betting. Here are some other stats according to US News. 1 in 4 people say they've been unable to pay a bill because of wagers they made. Some say they've bet their rent money. 1 in 3 say they have debts because of gambling. Over 15% say they've taken out a loan to fund their bets, including predatory and very evil high-interest payday loans. More than half carry a credit card balance month to month. And about 1 in 10 say they've sought treatment for a gambling addiction. And if that's not enough, 21% of sports bettors say they've verbally abused an athlete after losing money on a bet.
I mean, if I were to look at my mentions right now, I'm sure the majority of them are about me fucking up somebody's parlay.
I mean, LeBron.
More than likely, you know, if I have a good game, it's just like, yeah, you're supposed to. If you have a bad game, it's like, why'd you fuck up my parlay? It's like, I'm sorry, John.
And it wasn't just pro athletes that got harassment. The NCAA ran anti-harassment ads during March Madness, asking fans to stop threatening college athletes, who, by the way, are just teenagers, over lost bets. These platforms track behavior in detail. They know how often someone bets, how much they deposit, and how their activity changes over time. The data feeds targeting systems, and I use that word targeting very specifically. Users who deposit frequently or lose heavily may receive additional incentives. Some accounts are even assigned hosts. In one lawsuit, a high-volume bettor alleged she lost more than $150,000 while receiving encouragement to deposit more.
So these gambling companies that know when we're most impetuous, that there's reams and reams of data on us. What kind of matches that for the adolescent male?
It's not a fair wager.
Do they have enough data to pinpoint potential problem gamblers?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, they know the people that are addicted.
In 2023, DraftKings briefly promoted and I'm not kidding when I say this, never forget parlay tied to New York teams on September 11th. After the backlash, the company apologized. Parlays are marketed as small bets with massive upside. Missed by one leg and you were so close. You didn't lose, you almost won. So what do? You reload. And if you actually beat the house, they'll basically do whatever they can not to pay you.
It was devastating.
Chris Benton in Virginia saw big dollar signs through BetMGM in 2023, but the company voided his $214,000 payout a few hours later.
They just kept, spamming me with their terms and conditions about the obvious errors clause.
The apps have entire teams of analysts whose job is to literally identify skilled bettors and get rid of them. And it gets a little weirder. Accounts with long losing histories, professional gamblers actually purchase these accounts from people who've racked up big losses because the app's algorithm assumes these accounts belong to a chronic loser and leaves it alone. The losing account is more valuable to a professional than the clean one because the system is designed to extract from people who lose, and a professional can fly under the radar for a few weeks before it catches on. The app's built a platform to drain people who lose, and somehow that platform became exploitable because it works so well. Sports betting is everywhere now. You can't escape it. It doesn't matter what sport you're watching. Ads attack you from everywhere. Courtside, dugout, on the ice, in the stadium. You could be watching curling and still see sports betting ads. Odds scroll across the bottom of pregame shows. Broadcasters reference spreads mid-game. Former athletes appear in commercials. And they can't or won't call it what it really is: gambling. So instead it's called engagement or responsible play. And the affiliate model has completely poisoned the sports media. When a media outlet or a podcast host gets you to sign up for a betting app, they can make hundreds of dollars off of you. And if they sign you up for a rev share deal instead, they're actually making money off everything you lose. And during an ESPN broadcast where the host was discussing the news of the NBA gambling scandal, an ESPN bet ticker was on screen. And someone in the control room probably realized, oh wait, maybe we shouldn't have a gambling ad while we're talking about an NBA gambling scandal.
Sports gambling is a huge part of what you do, so we put those all out there as a preamble because it might be in the back of people's minds, and we acknowledge that this is a different time and place.
And poof, it just disappears. Awkward. Sports journalists have told reporters they feel they can't push back on gambling stories because the companies keeping their outlets alive are the same companies they'd be reporting on. And all of this betting has completely rewired how fans watch sports. Your team may win by 20. Before, it would have been a great moment, but now you feel sick because they didn't cover.
They don't want to have to come to a game and be worrying about their own fans cheering them or booing them because they didn't make the parlay. They supposed to get 25 points, but they got 22, 23 points. And what it does is it changes the narrative of the game.
Sports were supposed to be about effort and talent. Now every possession carries a price. DraftKings and FanDuel once begged not to be called gambling operations. Now betting is baked into the experience. For millions of people, it's no longer optional background noise. It's just part of the game.